AI is forcing us to be more human, in my opinion. Like it because just having this conversation, like we have to think outside the box. We have to really examine like what is it that makes us different. And we just have to kind of keep pulling at that thread.
I, for a long time, didn't think I was creative, and part of that was just, not like having a lack of self-belief, but also just definition of creativity, because I conflated creativity with art, and art specifically being the act of creating, like, from scratch, a painting, a piece of
Mhm.
music, a poem, what have you, right? Whereas creativity is a
All right. So it is time for the Gen X Unplugged show. And this week we're going to be talking about why AI makes Gen X creativity the most valuable skill in 2025. And I don't know why I put the 2025 on there, probably because the AI told me. but but just sounds good. But really, we're talking 2025, 26, 27, 28, 50. I don't know. It'll be all there. So anyway, Mike is back with us. He was gone for a couple of weeks. He was in Australia, and I'm really interested to hear if he has, I don't know, does he have an Australian accent? Let's find out. Mike, what do you got for us here?
G'day, Corey. I lived in Australia for 8 years and I could never master the accent. So, no, I did not magically get it back after just a week. But yeah, thanks for having me again. I am Mike Buccialia. I'm the founder of MindWorks, which is a self discovery coaching program that helps people get to the root cause of stress and help achieve all the ambitions we have in life and feel good doing it. We're going to talk a lot about that today in terms of finding our source of creativity, allowing ourselves to express that creativity. I think our generation does struggle with that, maybe in particular when we see these younger generations jumping on TikTok and Instagram, and you got kids running YouTube channels. Like they don't think twice about it, but it feels unnatural for us. And so MindWorks is very much about finding those sources of resistance. What are we believing about ourselves? Where we need to kind of unlock some of the mental knots we have around our own creativity, our own expression, and getting what we want out of life.
So, okay, you don't have one. I was thinking like, remember Crocodile
Yes,
Dundee? Did you
definitely.
watch the movie Crocodile Dundee with
Of
Paul
course.
Hogan? Now that's a knife or whatever he says, like that kind of thing. So anyway, I'm Corey and I have a Minnesota accent. Everybody tells me, haha, so that's how it goes. But I talk about a lot of stuff. Like I've been coming up with my tagline recently. Like I have a blog slash newsletter called redefining retirement.io. But this channel specifically, I am kind of focusing on building a business in public, a creator business kind of, I'm kind of feeling my way through exactly what kind of business it is. But the primary goal is to build something that sustains well into my old years, right? I'm not necessarily looking to retire. So, that's just kind of the way I'm building it. And part of that is podcasts like these. So I can, explore things with guys like Mike to just kind of figure out this future work stuff. But then I'm going to have other videos that maybe you haven't noticed, but I have other videos that are talking about like you know, rolling your sleeves up and actually doing shit online. So like stick around, subscribe if you want to hang out and learn that stuff because there's a lot going on. Also, too, one thing that I want to pimp, and I've been talking about this with so many different people, is like how important it is to have a newsletter if you're in any kind of a business. And I know like people tell me, "Oh, I don't need one or this or that, but I've been doing this stuff for such a long time. I've seen so many different businesses as a marketing consultant and as a Google Ads manager, where if they would have had, an email list when they were putting out all this content and they were building these big followings on platforms like YouTube and LinkedIn and, Facebook, that they would have, saved their business or their business would have been a lot bigger. So if you are interested in that, and you should be, I'm always going to have like a little link below the show to where you can get that. Also, man, I'm really getting out of hand here. I just thought of something else. Mike and I and all the guests, when we're talking about whatever we talk about on any of the podcasts, we always bring up books and references that we know about. I also have a link in the show notes for that. So check in there, check in the show notes and you'll be able to find all the books and all the stuff that we talk about. I try to put them in there so we just have one nice little spot for everybody to go reference them if they need to. So anyway, enough blabbing. Let's get into it. So here's why AI makes Gen X creativity the most valuable skill. We're going to start with number one. AI amplifies but cannot replace human
Mhm.
perspective. How about that? You were kind of talking about this a little bit before we started. I mean, it's not it's related. Start with that.
Yeah, that's a great statement. That perspective. So, we hear these words like authenticity, right? And what the hell does that even mean? How do you know if someone's being authentic? Quite honestly, I thought I was, being authentic or genuine most of my life when really I was, following different protocols. I just didn't know that it was happening in my mind. We play these personas. We all know what it means. Like there's all kinds of terms out there like masking and like, you show up to work and you kind of, I don't know, guard your emotions, guard your interests, guards what you really think because, you got to manage different situations. And my point is it's hard to be authentic, like meaning like really fully expressing exactly how you think and feel because some of how you think and feel won't feel appropriate at work in particular, right? But this perspective, that is where you can find like real uniqueness because Corey, no one else can see the world through your eyes. Only you can. You are the sum of all your experiences, which shapes your perspective, which shapes how you see the world, which shapes how you've experienced the world, which shapes what you think about and how you have your unique approach. So I love that concept of perspective. Like you have to have the perspective. It has to be born from your unique experiences and then how you've shaped your experiences to have your worldview, to how you've navigated the world, to how you've solved problems, to how you've figured out your own life. And sharing that is going to be what shines through. So, and then I think, then we're talking about using AI to kind of amplify that and stuff. But if you say AI, tell me what I think, or like give me a perspective. Don't not using my perspective, just give me a perspective. It'll take the sum culmination of everything, and it'll be stock standard. It'll be down the line. It'll be not interesting, and people are going to have to pick up on that because there already is so much of it. But leveraging your unique perspective, that's the simplest way to be authentic and do something unique because, like I said, only you can have this perspective. So I think that's a great word and a great thing to hone in on is like, what is my take on this? Like, what do I feel about this or what has worked for me? And then, yeah, if you want to use AI to massage it, to help you amplify it, to get it on different channels, great. But you got to start with something unique about your experience.
Yeah, there's always that concept of like taste and then also empathy, right? Like the AI can have or it can mimic empathy, but I don't think it's not going to come from an authentic place. It might not hit exactly the same. And I was talking about I thought about this the other day, actually to write it down on my pad. I've got like freaking post-it notes like strewn all over my desk. I tried to get myself away from that a couple of years ago, but hasn't worked. But anyway, I wrote down, I said, your combination of skills and experiences are like a fingerprint, right? And like no fingerprint is exactly the same, right? Like where that to me just kind of like it just reminds me of like there's so many insights that we're going to have, there's so many stories that we're going to have, and emotional resonance that we're going to have that just isn't going to come through on the AI. And I'm like, I kind of waffle a little bit in my mind because it just gets better and better. And then I see some of these videos that are coming out with the AI, and it's just like it makes me waffle. But at the end of the day, it might be entertaining. And hell, there's probably gonna be people falling in love and getting married to AIs and all kinds of weird shit.
Already
But
happening.
it's yes, but at the end of the day, there's still gonna be that you almost need that flame, that soul, that you know what I mean? There's just that thing that's gonna help us connect because we all want to be connected, right?
But hang on, Corey, I want to add to that because the AI video stuff is unbelievably impressive right now. So it's hard to fathom 5 years from now, like the quality, the realism to it. But to tie into what you're saying, there's not that much of a difference of a screenwriter, director, producer, that combination of having like a vision and a story and where that was born out of either in, one person's mind or the team that were creating kind of this story, and then they're using human actors to portray that story, right? And that story came from, people's creativity. And I would like to hope, I agree. Let's see how it plays out. But whether you're using human actors to portray that story, like that storyline is coming from human generated stuff. So can AI come up with a similar storyline that evokes that same emotional response? Maybe we'll see. But I do think that regardless how the thought gets portrayed, either through digital actors basically and or digital assistants in kind of writing, it's there's going to be something inherent about like realizing like, oh, there's something unique about that person's experience and perspective that is going to come through. Or even if we can't tell the difference, we will somehow seek it out because there'll be too much just content that's just generated that doesn't have something behind it. And so however we tune into that human connection that we know we have, I think people are going to be paying more attention to that and seeking it out because it's just be inundated with everything else that doesn't have that like real perspective and unique experience tied to it.
So this is kind of an interesting segue into the number 2 that I have on my list here. All right, real quick before we keep going, if you're digging this podcast or this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button so that you know the next time this comes out. Also, check the description because I always drop a free resource down there. Sometimes it's the notes for the podcast, some of the stuff that we discuss in there. Sometimes it's a free tool. Sometimes it's a guide. I don't know. Just depends. But check down there and see what we got for you. And let's get back to the show. Innovation, not imitation, drives value. And how that relates to the video idea that we're talking about right now is I was thinking about, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. I don't have you seen those videos where they took like biblical characters and then they made it look, they turned them into influencers.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what
yeah.
I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Mhm.
so it'd be like Daniel in the lion's den and he'd be walking through like, with the cell phone going like, oh, we're in here and they're looking at me and I hope I make it, and it was just kind of cool. And he did it for like Jesus on the cross and all that stuff. And it's like the AI made that. And for all we know, the AI could have possibly, maybe that was a list of ideas on a long list that the AI pumped out. But the human determined that it was actually a good idea, or it was the human that recognized that, like, oh, wow, this is something here based on his experience, right? He knew that it would be funny if I combined, the Bible with Gen X influencers. You know what I mean? Like it's just kind of, or Gen Z influencers or whatever kind of influencer. But I thought that was kind of a really good example. And it's like, that's kind of the seed of like what we're looking for. And it's kind of like that where I was talking about taste early on, right? Like you can
Yeah.
sit there and churn out, I always go back to music all the time because I'm a music guy, but it's like you don't want to sit there and listen to AC/DC songs over and over and then, replicate AC/DC 1 million times, because that would just be boring. But like eventually another band comes out and it's just like, whoa, they got a whole different take. They've got a whole different vibe, a whole different attitude. They're singing about things that doesn't necessarily, that's like new or it's a different angle on something. And I think that is, determining and making that type of art has to almost come from the human perspective. Yes, they can do that. The AI can do it, but like the final decision is up to the human to, whether it's like legit or not, or good or not, or bad or not, and you might like AI, but you also might prefer humans. I don't know. I'm just
Well,
ripping
I
on that
think
one.
just to take your example of that, taking Bible stories and put them from the selfie kind of influencer view, that is creativity, right? Somebody came up with that and thought this would be funny. This would be interesting because they merged those two, like that old school Bible storytelling with this new school. This is how everyone's communicating these days, like, look at me type of thing, and using AI to deliver on that. So, I mean, maybe it's worthwhile, Corey, just to talk about the definition of creativity, right? So it's like, okay, we all, okay, I'll speak for myself. Like, I, for a long time, didn't think I was creative. And part of that was just, not like having a lack of self belief, but also just definition of creativity. Because I conflated creativity with art, and art specifically being the act of creating, like from scratch, a painting, a piece of
Mm.
music, a poem, what have you, right? Whereas creativity is a great example, is like, okay, I don't need to like actually go create the video. I don't need to be the producer. I don't need to like do the editing. I can have AI do that. But my creativity is like, it's funny to mash these two things up. And Corey, if we can all develop and get over, I hate to use the term, but like I think it's common things, limiting beliefs. Like I had that, and it was like, well, I don't really care how great it is, and I don't care how many people it reaches or whatever. I think it's funny to mash these two things up. We're in this amazing time where you can deliver on that creative juice and concept in like, minutes or an hour or two to like just go, this would be funny, and then make it exist in the world. Right. So I think again, that difference of what creativity is innovation. It's mashing up two things that already exist, but doing it from the unique perspective of this is interesting or humorous to me. And then maybe there'll be 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people who find that same common interest. But that's as simple as creativity is. And I think we all need to like allow ourselves to acknowledge and express our creativity in whatever doses. And AI is absolutely helping facilitate that. And I just think as a act of self-expression, it's just a good feeling to play with this stuff and create things, and just like it builds on itself, because you never know what's going to happen when you create and express and put things out in the world.
There's so many things that are possible now for just the average person to really, utilize their creativity, because you think back, I'm even thinking like with music, like for instance, again, sorry. Like now you can go to Suno, or what's the other one? I forget what the other one is called, but it's like you can just, I want a song that sounds like this, and that. You can make up your own lyrics, or they can do it, or whatever. And it is a little kind of cheesy, and it does feel a little wrong in a way, if you're a musician and you put all this time into learning your instrument and all this other stuff, right? Like, but I've always had this stuff in my mind. Like, there's always a vision I had in my head, like how I would like this to sound. But I didn't necessarily have the skills to get it out of my head to sound like that, right? So what happens? It just sits in my head and doesn't go anywhere. You can do that with tons of different people out there. Like you can go back, I don't know how many years, and look at people like a painter, for instance. Like, are we just only supposed to, let's go back to the cave. Are we only supposed to use charcoal or a rock to do something? Or when paint came along, it's like, oh, is it cool to use paint? Right. It's another avenue to express your creativity, whether it was easier or harder before. It just opens up opportunities for everybody. I mean, so many people are producing music in their bedrooms. That wasn't possible, unless you were Tom Scholes from Boston in in the 70s, but he had to have tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars equipment to do that. Now it's like, it's open to anybody to like produce, and it's getting easier and easier. And that's like almost any creative endeavor. And now you've got movies, you had to go through all this stuff. It's just, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, kind of made it more,
Accessible,
what's that?
accessible, like
Accessible, but
available,
there's
easier.
another word, and I'm totally not like thinking about it. So anyway, but like I grabbed the creativity. So creativity is the ability to generate new, original, and valuable ideas or solutions. It involves making novel connections, thinking outside the box, producing outcomes that are both unique and useful. Creativity can be applied to art, problem solving, innovation, business, and daily life, wherever new approaches, perspectives, and products are needed. In practice, creativity means seeing possibilities, reimagining old concepts, and transforming the familiar into something fresh and meaningful. So it just gives you the tools to express that stuff where you might not have in the past.
Or let me, just for whatever reason, this popped in my head as you were reading that definition. But here's the other thing I think is cool, is that, like you're saying, you had that inspiration. Like, I don't know how to get this sound out of my head, and maybe an AI tool can help you do that much more quickly, or at least start to play with it so you fine tune it through. Oh, it's not quite right, but now I have more information. Whatever. It lets you do that cheaply and quickly. So in this theme too, of the broader theme about Gen X and how we're going to navigate these next, few decades, the other thing I think is interesting about this is like, I know, like I feel from our generation, it was like we had loyalty and we wanted things to be long lasting and long standing and quality products and stuff. And I think with creativity and this AI and this low barrier to entry, right? Is like if we have some creative thing, we should act on it more often, play with these tools, get a song out, whatever. And like, and even if it's a product, because it said creative, fresh solution or whatever, I know that I've talked myself out of like, I've had ideas for like little apps or whatever. Before it was like, I don't have the technical skill. I'm not going to pay somebody. It's not
That's
that
great. That's a
important.
great example.
But now it's just like go on, there's Lovable and there's Blink and there's, I'm sure, dozens of others that like
Cursor,
yeah, and just like play with it
Replit.
and like because it's such a low time and cost barrier, just like get it out there. And if you make $100, $1,000, but you spent 1 to 2 hours and you fostered your creativity, you tried something new, there's just something good about doing that for growth and like experimentation, which is kind of the overarching theme of this podcast is like we got to be trying new things at this stage in our life because we don't want to get caught out as everything's moving quickly. But anyway, long story short is I think another thing to get over is like, oh, this has to be great. It has to like be a scalable model. It has to be something that could, stand the test of time. No, launch an app. Spend 5, 10 hours doing it. If you, first of all, just try it to try things. Second of all, if it ends up making you $1,000, great. And then if it's like, well, then somebody else came up with some better app or it's just too hard to market or whatever, let it die on the vine. Go get another one, right? I feel like this is the iterative nature that we can embrace and get into. But if we don't, then we're just missing opportunities to be expressive, to create, and make a little extra money.
You're doing really good at like anticipating the next bullet point.
Okay.
What time? So number 3, creativity future proofs careers. The most resilient and in-demand professionals are those who pivot, adapt, and invent new opportunities. As jobs roles shift and vanish, the ability to ideate, rebrand, and create new value streams, whether through content, coaching, digital products, software, whatever it is a proven hedge against obsolescence. And I always keep going back to this idea, and it kind of adds on to what you were saying before. When it comes to like first principles human, we're all just storytellers and tool builders, right? Like, and it's like if we have to build tools to tell our stories or whatever, I mean, that's really all we are at the end of the day. And AI can help us do that, both of those things better, like, and I don't know. Did I have I talked about this before? The storytellers and tool builders. I think I did on an earlier episode, but
Definitely storytellers. I don't know about the tool builders.
it's basically like the idea that like, if you go back to the caveman days, the guy that went out hunting, he had to find the game, which when he came back to the village, he's like, I found it. You just have to go this way, over there, over here, over there, over there. Like he solved the problem. Like he found where the game was. Well, then he had to kill it more efficiently. So like he carved a spear. He made a tool to do that. You know what I mean? So those are two really basic components. It's like, that's really what we're all doing is that exact thing. We're telling stories and we're making tools because we're just helping the next person on. We're and you can do that. AI is just a tool that you can use to tell more stories or to share, to build tools, all that kind of stuff. So that was kind of the whole idea behind that. And these are the kind of abilities that are going to help you stay more future proof. It's going to make you more versatile. So you have to kind of hang out with the AI. You're going to have to learn how to do it because I heard somebody, I think it was Gary Vee or something, talking on a podcast recently. He's just like, if you didn't use the internet like in the early days, it's like maybe that was fine, but eventually you had to use the internet. You had to go on Google and search for something, right? Like, I mean, it's just everybody had to learn how to do that. You had to learn to search for something. Like he was joking. He goes, my first search was wine, like, 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 yeah, it's true. I mean, mine probably was too. Who knows what I was looking for that day. Maybe it was like fantasy football. I don't know. But like you just had to learn. Well, you have to do the same thing with AI now. Like you can't you have to learn how to ask it questions so that you can learn better and use it. So that is just part of, future proofing your career and doing all that.
But I want to stay with this theme, Corey, of creativity because and perspective and this uniqueness of us as individuals and humans. Because yeah, future proofing and jobs and such. And like, yeah, let's say you and I are both going for a job interview and we've got similar histories and we've done similar work, we've gotten similar outcomes, we've grown businesses, we figured out problems, whatever. But I come up and I say, oh yeah, in the last 6 months I built 7 apps and I did this with AI and whatever. That's going to be a distinguishing factor for sure. So I think that plays in, and it's just like it's showing growth, it's showing creativity, showing
Yeah.
ingenuity, shows you're willing to learn, shows you're willing to like put yourself out there. And who knows, one of the apps might be super interesting to on a job interviewers. And it's just, I can only see it as an advantage. But in addition to that, I think there's just something, this is a bias. It's maybe a hope more than anything that our creative expression as individuals is going to be our advantage in the future. And the more we're willing to self-express, genuinely self-express, again, this word genuine, I mean it's from our unique perspective. We're not letting AI come up with the perspective, come up with the story, come up with the whatever the app or solution or thing. It's like, let that do come from some soul searching and just like, what problem have I really struggled with that I want to go address? What idea do I have that I want to share? What am I experiencing that is hard right now or exciting right now? And let that come through. You can use these tools to help facilitate that, amplify it, whatever. But I just feel like the more we're in tune with ourselves and not like just having this thing think and create totally for us is going to be a real game changer, whether that is earning income on your own through this thing or going into the job market and saying like, you want to know me? The first question is like, tell me about yourself. And we go, well, I worked here, I did this and that. It's like, oh, I'm really into this and I created this app and it's doing this and what have you. And it's like, you want to check out my stuff? Go look at this app or check out my post or I made this video. And that self-expression becomes part of our resume almost. And so I just believe it helps you in all avenues, whether you're in the job market or you are exploring entrepreneurship, business ownership, self-employment, solopreneurship, any of that stuff. I'm trying to put this point on self-expression. Creativity is just a good life skill. And the more we can express it, tap into it, I think the better off we'll be, whatever avenue we're navigating.
AI is forcing us to be more human, in my opinion. Like it, because just having this conversation, like we have to think outside the box. We have to really examine like what is it that makes us different. And we just have to kind of keep pulling at that thread. And if you can pull at that thread in public, right? And this is something I talk about a lot too. Like, in the old days, you'd like have a resume and you try to like tie all your, I don't even know if the kids even know what resumes are anymore. I'm sure they do, but maybe not. I don't know. But like I always think of your resume these days is like living and breathing, and you should be putting that out into public because it's like you're saying, if you're building these tools and you're doing this stuff, and sharing what you're learning, potential employers, potential clients, whatever, they're going to see, oh, well, this guy knows what he's doing, because you're showing that you're learning new things. You're showing that you know what you're talking about, instead of just sending a piece of paper to somebody and saying, well, this is what I did for the last 20 years. I mean, it may be relevant, it may not be. Like I could put my dishwashing like job on my resume, but like that they're not going to care about that if you're like applying for a software development job or something like that, or whatever kind of a job. So you want to put it out there. Again, tell your story, share the tools that you've been using to solve problems for people, and it's like and you have to be creative about it. Like it's good that the AI is taking some of these jobs away. Like, right. It's like, it's good that people, I'm trying to think of some examples, like back in the 70s when auto workers were getting replaced. Now it was like devastating like communities and it was taking a lot of jobs away. But honestly, did those people that worked on those lines, I mean, I would say that there was a large part of them that didn't necessarily want to be doing that job, right? Like they didn't want to have to sit there and put one bolt in one hole all day. Maybe I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that do that, but like, I don't know if it was necessarily serving them as best as it could be, right? So we want to let the AI take some of that stuff off our plate and force us to do more with what we have. And I know that sounds too general. I feel like I'm not doing it justice there, because there probably are people out there that are like, you know what, just give me like something stupid to do and I'll do it all day. Those are great. Maybe they're not the ones that are listening to the show, so maybe I don't have to worry. But I think that's definitely the point, is just be be more creative, be more human, and don't be a robot, right? 'Cause we have robots to be robots. So
And Corey, maybe if I can try to put a fine point on that. I think we were trying to get to the same thing too, is like regardless of the outcome, whether my creativity in a video, an app, or some sort of art I create, some sort of music, whether however it performs in terms of some sort of monetary gain back to us, there is just inherent value for ourselves to better understand ourselves, to come up with a unique perspective, to find that creativity inside ourselves, even that frustrate. Like I find it frustrating. Like I said, I didn't believe I was a creative person. It didn't feel like it came naturally to me, and that's a whole other topic of how I was limiting myself and things I was believing about myself. But that struggle to find how can I make this problem less of a problem? How that's creativity. How can I make this easier? How can I make this simpler? You start asking yourselves those questions, you come up, mind is beautiful, it'll come up with creative things. And that self-expression, like digging deep, that is just rewarding in its own right. Forget about if it nets us a job or our app or video nets thousands of views and thousands of dollars, right? So I think I want to put that fine point on, like there's inherent value in investigating our own creativity and expressing that. Like it's just a rewarding feeling as being a human, right? So to your point, like don't be a robot, like go soul searching, go do that stuff. It's just worth living, right? It makes life more interesting.
all right. Well, that time you didn't have a segue to the next place, but we'll but that's a good point. So number 4, AI is a force multiplier for creative output. We already talked about this a little bit in earlier points, but modern tools from ChatGPT to generative design apps level the playing field. Ideas get tested faster, stories reach global audiences, and solopreneurs can outpace legacy teams. Gen Xers who use AI as a collaborator, not a competitor, keyword, multiply their productivity and creative impact. So we already talked about this a little bit in some of our earlier points, but that is, again, use it to expand yourself, to add more. I mean, I certainly have been like, since I've started, it is, as it relates to like having clients and all that stuff, they're like 10 years ago I would have had to go and hire somebody to build a landing page or build a website in order to like, like, hey, we need to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, I could do it myself, but I didn't have enough time. I had to manage the account. I had to do other stuff. So it was kind of like, you know what? We just had to kind of work with what we had a lot of times. Well, now I can just go over the last couple of years. I'm like, I can just go and like, hey, AI, help me improve this website. And then it just go and tell me exactly what we need to do. I give it to the client, boom, done in like 10, 15 minutes, right? Instead of like, having to go find somebody to build this landing page or having to find somebody to build a website. Now it's getting easier and easier. Like I would have had to have somebody on staff to do that, or I would have had to have another freelancer. Now I don't need that anymore. I can do more by myself. So that's one example of how I use it. And I know there's a ton of other ones, like you may not have to hire a social media agency in the future, because you're just going to put it into the AI and it's going to distribute it for you. It'll probably create it for you, distribute it for you. It'll do everything. I mean, and these are just internet marketing style like examples, but there's plenty of other ones out there that are slowly happening. You can just do more with less, right? It's making you more productive and maybe even crazy in some in some ways, because now you got more shit to organize.
Okay,
And
well that's not really on the topic of creativity, but where I just feel compelled to say this because I this is like a big aspect of what I do too. Like the people I'm working with is like about stress reduction. It's about this need to always be on and constantly productive. And so while these tools will absolutely help us with shortcuts and make things faster, at the end of the day, like I think Corey, we have this theme too about like maybe as our generation shifts out of the workforce and we're starting to look at retirement, what that means. Are we doing nothing? Are we volunteering? Are we starting a business? Are we advising? Whatever we're going to do, right? Is if we don't like we will always have a boss, and that boss will be our mind. And if our mind is constantly telling us, be productive, be on, get more done, then we're going to continue working ourselves to death and stressing ourselves out. And I think both of us are on the same page about this like redefining retirement is about like living a meaningful, rewarding life where you continue to contribute and possibly bring in income off these things, right? And what I'm getting at is I think we do need to be very cautious that AI doesn't get things done in 5 minutes, and then we spend that next, something that took an hour now takes 5 minutes. We spend that next 50 minutes doing 10 other things versus going, I just gained an hour of my life back. Now, how do I live life? We got to remain engaged in life, and that definitely is a mindset thing because we could be productive 24 hours a day, especially if we have AI running in the background. And it's like, it's creating more work for us, right? If we have it like out doing stuff and creating, then we got to check on it, we got to implement it, we got whatever. So unless it's like fully automated, which is not there yet in terms of running a business for us, then, it's going to create more work for us and keep us more engaged, and we're going to become beholden to it, right? And so that's where our mind and mindset is really important here to not get caught up in the ultimate productivity of never turning off.
Yeah, and it's just it's kind of the same thing with any other tool. It reminded me of the book The 4 Hour Work Week. Like everybody thinks it's about like only working 4 hours a week, which that is the catch, like it wants you to, everybody wants that short work week. But I think the book was more about like, okay, what do I do with all the rest of the time?
Mhm.
Like, I mean, that's like, it's great. Tim Ferriss like optimized the hell out of his business, right? Like, so he only had to work 4 hours a week. It didn't mean that he was just sipping Mai Tais on, the beach all day. It's like, no, that was running in the background. And then he was going out and living life. He was learning how to dance, like salsa dance. He learned how to kickbox in Thailand. You know what I mean? Like he went out
Yeah.
and did this stuff because he was able to make everything so efficient that it gave him the time to go do that stuff, and so that's actually a really good book to think about, like on this point, is to read that. You're going to get some good, uh, I would say some somewhat timeless information and advice on like building a business, but just that whole mental side of like how AI is
Mhm.
affecting us. And it's not about AI. This came out like in 2005 ish or somewhere in there. That's where a lot of us started thinking like entrepreneurs, is when we read that book. I know it was kind of a turning point for me, but that was his key thing. Like, okay, it's about what you do with the other hours that aren't in your business, right? I'll show you how to whittle down to 4 hours, but now you're faced with, now what else am I going to do? So that actually is a good book. So that one will go in the link below.
There
I'll
you go.
put it in there. It might
Can
even
I
be in there already. So yeah, go ahead.
can I try to bridge that back to creativity a little bit too? Because I've had a number of clients who have been like definitely not miserable, but somewhat dissatisfied in their career, and they're kind of wanting to make a pivot or just need a break, whatever it is. And, the simple question is, all right, what do you want to be doing? And then it's like, I don't know. I don't even know what I would do if I wasn't working. I don't have hobbies. I don't have interests. And that is also a signal of not tapping into creativity, right? Like
Yeah.
that, and there's this weird paradox, Corey, where it's like, we so stressed and caught up with work, and especially with it being digital, always on, emails all the time. We need to allow some breathing space to allow that creativity, to allow ourselves to dream, right? It's like we
Yeah.
don't have time to even dream, and that's creativity, right? Just like fantasize, like what would a great day look like? What would I learn? What language could I learn? What country could I visit? Like what could I volunteer? Could I go teaching? Like obviously there's infinite possibilities, and some of that creativity is just like, what if I could be creative with my life and I had, if I figured out a way to get my income right and I had more time, if I use these tools to get myself more time, to get my life back in my hands, what would I do with that time? Not knowing what to do with that time seems to be a barrier to like seeking it out. But yet we often need that time and space to get that creative juices flowing of like, what would I like to my life to look like? And then how do I find hobbies, interest, and income to create that life, right? But oftentimes we need some sort of space, whether that's a weekend retreat or just a day off. Like it's like we never
10
give
minutes in
ourselves
the
the
morning.
space. Yeah. So it is this thing where we need a little, like, when people say they wouldn't know what to do if they had more time and they wouldn't know what to do if they're not working, but yet they don't like work, it's like that's a sign you need to allow some creativity in and give yourself the space to dream, to fantasize, to create a life you want to live, right? And so I would encourage people to find, like I said, whether that's a weekend retreat, solo retreat kind of thing, journaling, something, just allow that expression and try to take some of that limit off.
All right. So we got one more point here before we get into some action steps. So stay tuned for those, viewers, listeners. Number 5, creativity exists in the heart of influence and leadership. Employers, clients, and audiences want content and solutions that are original, persuasive, and memorable. Creative skills are essential for communicating with clarity, inspiring teams, and building authentic brands, especially in a noisy AI saturated market. So, how's that, Haya?
Well, I think it's the summary of everything we're just saying here, right? So everyone's looking for creative solutions, right? And they're looking for something that stands out. And to your point, stands out is a mean between, you know, other humans. And then definitely standing out from like something that, a program created, right? And so I think it comes back to my last point, which is like, I do think we have to start getting good at this skill of creativity. And maybe this is the most important thing for whoever needs to hear this, because I've said it a couple times here, didn't believe I had creativity. I now have done a 180 on that. I absolutely am certain all of us have some creative aspect, this unique perspective we talked about earlier, too. We need that to shine through. Companies are looking for it, buyers or other people who want to consume our creativity or buy our services that are creative. We're looking for that stuff and we have some sort of sixth sense about it. So cultivating that, I think, is going to be an edge. And like I said, it's just a fulfilling, rewarding process in its own right. So something we need to put our attention on.
So, actionable steps, how to leverage creativity in your career and business. So, number 1 is going to be embrace lifelong learning and reinvention. That is, we've already talked about that a little bit. And honestly, even before AI, this is something that I've been like almost to a fault. I like learning, but it really is something that I've realized over the years, because I think school got a bad name when we were younger, because you just wanted to get the hell out of school. And it's just like it felt it almost wasn't creative in so many ways, right?
Oh,
Like they
sure.
they forced you to have to learn stuff that you didn't really care about. I didn't read a lot back then because it's like they're making me read shit I didn't care about, like so. But once I found stuff I like to read, it was like, oh well, I love reading. So that's definitely something. And as I became more and more of an entrepreneur, especially like when the internet hit, then I was like, oh wow, I can just go learn anything. I can look up anything. I can do whatever I want. And that started leading to my reinvention. So that's when I started transitioning from the mechanical draftsman into whatever it is I am now. So yeah, and their advice here is start micro experiments, try new digital tools, launch a side project, a prototype of a product. View creativity as a muscle, exercise it
Yes.
daily. And the side project, that's like one of the most pinnacle things that I did. Like I talk about this on my blog all the time. It's one of the core components of my story is I started building a fantasy football blog on the side when I was working at 101 Lighting, when I was a mechanical draftsman. And that led to just serendipitously, is that a word? Um,
Yeah.
it ended up one of the owners, hey, I saw you got a fantasy football website. How's that work? Blah blah blah. And he's asking me all these questions. He's like, well, maybe you should be in our marketing department. Like maybe you could help us with our website. He saw you already know how to do this. So like all of a sudden he put more value on me understanding websites, and then ultimately even Google Ads when I ran for the company. It's like than he did on the stuff I was doing for him already. Which whatever, but that's how it started. It started with me probably spending way too much time on my computer at my wife's. My wife didn't like it necessarily in the early days, but just those nights where I'm just sitting there building stuff and playing with stuff and trying to find ways that I could make money and build stuff and do all this stuff. I mean, it all started with lifelong learning and just running experiments and just playing.
My whole thing, Corey, is about better understanding ourselves through how our mind is working. And there is an immense power in questions if we're willing to ask ourselves and stay with some big questions. And one of the biggest questions, like when I said I struggle with creativity, I used to see all these people doing stuff. I'm like, oh, that's so funny, or that's so interesting. Oh, they're so creative. I wish I was like that. And it was like feeling like it's not possible. And I started asking myself, like, why not? Why isn't this
Yeah.
possible for me? Like that's a great, like, why can't I do that? Why isn't that possible? Why not me? Why not me is a great, like when we see someone doing something creative, doing something interesting, taking a risk, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's good for them. Like they're special." No, they're not. They're just like taking a chance. And then just the power of a question really is like, "Why not me?" If we see something that's interesting, we have this idea like, "Oh, I'd love to get this out there. Why not?" And I mean, really explore the answer. Not that's kind of, "Oh, why not?" And it's like, no, because there will reasons will come, and you will start to understand yourself better because you'll say like, "Oh, I have this excuse. I have this fear. I'm afraid of, embarrassment. I'm afraid it won't work or whatever." And then it's like, okay, now I can work with those things, right? But if we just like let the idea pass us by and keep on thinking I'm not creative or I don't have ideas, that is not true. We have ideas all day long. We just get so good at dismissing them and shutting them down. And
Yeah.
so spending some time with yourself is really important.
Creativity doesn't have to be a sculpture or a piece of music or whatever. It can be like, wow, I figured out a way to, manipulate numbers on a spreadsheet. You know what I mean? It could be that as well. So don't ever think that. And always comes back to my favorite quote, like what you just said. It's like whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. Right. So
Mhm.
why would you think that you can't? Because you gave up already, by just not even thinking that you can't. Um, Number two here, talked about this one already too. Pair human imagination with AI tools. That's given. So get out there, use AI for brainstorming, drafting, testing ideas. Let it handle the repetitive work, freeing you to focus on refining your voice, your message, and your story. Right, that's what you're looking for. The next point here, tell your story, build your influence. We already talked about this one too. Build in public. You know, don't just take all this stuff, put it on a resume that sits on your desk. Put your resume live on the internet. You know what I mean? Hey, like, yeah, I did this yesterday on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh, I love using this, Riverside.fm to make videos. And it's like, so people look at that and they're like, oh wow, he's doing videos, and like, oh, he's learning this new tool. And you know what I mean? Like, it's like people were engaging with that. So it's the same. There's so many different things, and I haven't been doing a good enough job of this in the past. Like for the past 10 years, I used to do it a lot with my fantasy football website and with my music marketing stuff. I used to tell people how I was making money with music, and they're like, "Wait, how'd you do that? Like, show me how to do that." Right? Because I was putting it out there and I was talking about it, and then it led to opportunities. And so, like I said, tell your story, put it out there, build in public, as they say.
So, Corey, in terms of like an actionable step, and I'm trying to think of how to put this into something practical and useful more than like a theory or ideology here. But I think the point we're getting across here is that creativity is a currency. It's valuable. Like I said, there's inherent value of just self-expression, exploring your own creativity. I think what we're trying to get to here with this is we're trying to put the emphasis on it is inherently within all of us, and it is a skill you can build and develop like any other skill. It's like
Yeah.
treat creativity like you would learning a language or taking tennis lessons. Like you have to put some attention on it and you have to give it some time and room to breathe. I don't have like a particular resource on how to spark creativity. I'm sure AI can tell you, and there's lots of worksheets and workbooks and journaling type prompts and things like that. So I guess if I could just simplify a practical step is like realize that creativity is going to be it's always been inherently valuable. We've always valued creativity as humans. We appreciate art for a reason and we appreciate creative solutions. We pay money for creative solutions, right? We get that. And if there's any part of you that is thinking or believing you don't have creativity, it's bullshit. You need to see through that. You need to ask yourself, why not? Why not me? And then if you believe us and if you like are hearing this and go like, yeah, I would like to be more creative. I do see the value of it, that inherent value and how it also translate into potential business income or getting your next job is you have to put some intention and attention and practice into it. How you go practice it, I don't have a tip for you, but my point is start putting some attention on it. Start believing you can be creative, start exploring it, start practicing it and letting yourself be expressive. And there's so much more to us than I think we ever let ourselves experience. And creativity is the great gateway into that.
I think when you just start doing stuff, and I'm trying to make this as broad as possible so that you can, so everybody can kind of think of themselves this way. But like I see a lot of people that are on YouTube, or when I started my latest project, the Redefining Retirement newsletter a couple of years ago, it's like you just start doing it. You just start, and it's like the creativity may not be there right away, other than the fact that you just kind of started doing it. But when you start doing it, you're going to start to see things your creativity is going to start to show up like little by little. My example, and I see this all the time with YouTubers, but I'm going to use my newsletter example is like when I first started writing, I'm like, I don't necessarily know what I want to do here. Like, I know I need a newsletter. I need to start one again. I felt this, compelling, like, hey, I miss doing this. I know I need to do this. So what am I going to talk about? And I'm like, well, why don't I just start talking about all my jobs that I've had? I had 19 jobs, right? And it's like, so I just kind of went down this path, like, oh, back in, I started working at dishwashing at a cafe, blah, 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 right? And I just kind of went down a thing. And like, as I was doing that, it was like, well, this reminds me of, it made me think of a song. So then I kind of pulled in a song into the story. And then I'm like, you know what? I don't like the way the images look here. I want these images to kind of feel a certain way, right? So I went and I
Right.
found all these images. Like, so when you go look at my redefiningretirement.io now, it's like what am I saying? There's like a feeling, like a vibe that you get
Yeah.
from the pictures that I'm going for. But it wasn't like that in the beginning. It was just like generic, like stock photography. Well, now it's generic stock photography that I just found a
That's
certain
shaped
type.
around your, yeah.
Yeah, it's black and white. I put a piece of masking tape over it because I wanted it to look like, you had a Sharpie that you were like changing, redefining retirement. You're just
I
changing
like it.
stuff, right? So, but I didn't just think of that the day one when I started writing. I just like started writing, and then I'm like, all of a sudden that stuff just starts to come out of you, right? You have a taste, you have a certain vibe. So to me, it's just like, even if you do this with YouTube, you're going to just hit record, and it's like, you might try to do the framework of some great, you might try to be Mr. Beast or something like that right out of the gate, but you could use that as a framework, but ultimately you're going to start to pull in your own taste and your own style into it, right? It's the same thing. It happened with music. It can happen with any job that you're in, really. Like, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this job a particular, here's step 1, 2, and 3. But ultimately it's the stuff that's kind of in between those steps that you start to pull in your own creativity into. So it's just a matter of, you just have to start. You can't study it. You just have to do it. So that's,
And you're hitting on a good point, and maybe we got to wrap up here, I know, but like
yeah,
the other inherent value of exploring creativity is exactly what you described. Creativity by nature is inherently iterative. And it is frustrating, right? Because like, oh, it didn't come out exactly the way I want. And that's all growth stuff, like the frustration, working through that annoyance, that discomfort. Because, especially if we want to become in some way entrepreneurs or, build a side hustle or a business or something, it comes with tons of frustration, tons of stuff ends up in your way.
yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't want that. I didn't want to deal with that today. And this creativity, this iterative thing is a good process to go to help us grow and like face this discomfort. And then also when it comes time to, like, let's say publish or whatever you're going to do with this creative outlet, if there's that fear, that resistance, then that's also good to explore, like overcoming that fear, like, oh, I don't know if people will like it, or I don't know if it's going to sell, or whatever that is. Like, these are all things that, like, if we learn to deal with that discomfort and then overcome it, that is growth. And if we keep
Yeah.
growing, then we're going to have a better chance at being successful and at least feel good about our efforts along the way, which is, to me, the biggest trick in life.
And in these last two, there's two more, like how to leverage creativity. They kind of sound a little counterintuitive, but like one of them is join and initiate collaborative communities, right? Like, so be in mastermind groups, be around other people that's how I started talking with Mike, honestly. Like I was, I was connected through somebody I talked to on LinkedIn, and they're like, "Oh, you guys would be great," So that led to doing this podcast because I'm like, "Let's hit record." So that was kind of a creative process, right? And then it just
Definitely.
starts to kind of flower, for lack of a better word. I don't. It feels wrong saying flower, but yeah, it just get out there, talk to people, forums, diverse input, get stuff from all over the place, and that will help viewer. It'll give you like a response as well, right? Because you're gonna get inputs to spark ideas, but then it's also gonna be a reinforcement for things that you are creating. Like that's happened with me. I don't know how many times you get. I have imposter syndrome all the time. Every time I come up with something like, but then somebody's like, "Oh man, that's great. I never thought of anybody looking at it like that," or so it
Unique
starts to
perspective.
reinforce your creativity, and it will start to kind of pull you or push you in a particular direction. And the last one, how you can leverage creativity, it's market creativity as a service. I know market's it's got a bad name with us, and we talked about this in an earlier episode, like selling yourself and all that stuff. But market the creativity as a service, right? You can package your approach. And
Yep.
again, do this. How you get that out there, you just talk about it. You build in public. You share, like, "Oh, hey, I just learned how to do Riverside FM. I love this tool." Or, "Hey, I think newsletters are great." Or, "Hey, you know what? I found this great widget at a," or whatever, like, I don't know. I'm running out of ideas here, but just put it out there, show everybody that you're solving problems, and offer consulting, like I said with my examples earlier, like my employer saw that I was doing stuff outside of work, and they're like, "Oh, you should be on our web team, you should be on our marketing department," because I was already doing it, right? So you can do the same thing, whether it's like learning AI, or maybe you're learning how to knit or whatever. Show what you're doing, put it out there. And yeah, so do you got any thoughts on those last
Yeah,
couple?
actually, to the first point, it's such a great tip is to just find like-minded people, find people who are also creating, who are also starting out, so you can like sometimes it's a bit intimidating to go, like, you go to a master class, fine, you're there to learn, but like when you want to start getting hands-on and start doing, it's good to balance the two, learn from people who have done it and you can learn some of the practices but also be around people who are in that early phase so you have that commonality and you can kind of support each other. And I was in a mastermind last couple weeks ago, and the person presenting brought in this notion of the golden goose, and it was just like, ah, so his idea around golden goose was, as you're looking to take a product or service to market, is there like one kind of avenue you could get access to that will be the golden goose and keep laying golden eggs, right? So it was an accountant, CPA that was talking, and they were like, I went into a major franchise group, and that was my golden goose because that franchise group had 100 franchisees, and all these franchisees need bookkeeping and accounting and tax advice and things like that. So it was just going to this one place, and as they spawn off more franchises, it's just the one place. So he has this golden goose, right? And that sparked creativity, like, what could be my golden goose? Or I hadn't thought of that concept, but I'm around other people that are problem solving, that are in business, that are, seeking clients and seeking avenues and just learning that new concept. Now it's up to my creativity, like, what is my golden goose? Would there be something like that for me, right? And just anyway, being around that type of people and just getting those little sparks. But then it is up to me to kind of get that creativity to figure like how could I leverage that concept, right? But being around other people helps create the spark.
Continuous learning, continuous doing, continuous teaching. That to me
Like
feels
it.
like the trifecta of like, how do you want to be more creative? How can you leverage creativity? I think that kind of sums that up. And one thing before we go is I want to kind of challenge somebody, because there's probably somebody out there like, and I already know there's already got some weird comments on my YouTube channel, but you're probably sitting there like, "There's no way I'm creative. There's nothing I can do," or whatever. But you know what? If that's you, if you're thinking that you're not creative in any way, put go in the comment and tell me, "Corey, I'm not creative, but at least tell me what you do or what you're interested in, and then I'll tell you. Like I'll give you an example of how you're creative, and maybe you just don't know it, right? I really think that I can find a creative bone in everybody. out there, you know? So like, if you
I
don't
agree.
think you do, tell me why you think that you're not creative, and tell me what it is that you do, or what hobbies that you like. And I think I can figure it out for you, or at least point you in the right direction. So
This
anyway,
is,
that's my challenge.
I don't know how to say this without it, like, being a cliche that I picked up, but that type of thinking, that type of mentality is very good for keeping us small and keeping us safe.
Yeah.
It is scary to put yourself out there. It is especially scary when you're like, this is my unique perspective. Therefore, if I put it out there, it is a reflection of me. That's like the scariest thing we can do. I think we
Yeah.
need to acknowledge that. And so those thoughts that come in like I don't creative, it's not true. It is a way to like protect us effectively and be like, don't put yourself out there. Just it's better to believe you don't have creativity, therefore you shouldn't try. Therefore, you don't have to put your risk of being rejected, to be ridiculed, whatever all of these fears are that are valid fears. I'm not saying the fears aren't valid, but the thoughts that were not creative, they are not valid, right? They're there because they're like, you just stay in your box. That way you won't get hurt effectively. It's really hard to convey if people are listening to this and just thinking like I'm making this up, but I was scared of all those things. I'm still scared of those things. You know, to be honest, like I have a little nerves, like, oh, I'm gonna record this thing with Corey. What are we gonna talk about? Is it gonna be good? Like, but I'm like, I just realized like I have to embrace that. I have to go forward with that because the creativity comes, as we've said, from trying and doing it. It's not about not being scared, and it's about ignoring the thoughts that are telling us we're not creative and just finding ways to get courage and manage the fear. But I didn't think I had a creative bone in my body. I was simplest way to put it is like I'm just a sales guy. Like I don't do anything creative. You know, give me the PowerPoint deck, I'll sell you the product, I'll do the contract. It's like all formulaic. I'm not being creative, but you can be creative in how you do the contracts. You can be creative in how you do the pitch, and there's all kinds of creativity in there. But that type of thinking is just check yourself. Like, what am I worried about? What am I scared about? Because you definitely have creativity. It just is scary to express it.
You gotta put in the reps. that was the that was my actually did a video on that this morning, because I was how my videos just were off of the last couple days, and I'm making another bad video today, like on my end in here. So, but it's like you gotta put in the reps.
Yes.
You just gotta grind through it, and you gotta figure it out, and it'll start to come. So just get out there and just start doing stuff, you know? Just start writing, just start recording, just start whatever it is, man. There's something out there for you to do. So,
And I agree, and I just want to acknowledge that just start is most likely going to have to be doing it scared, doing it with
oh yeah,
fear
absolutely.
that it's not good, that it feels apprehensive, like that feeling is going to be there. It's new. You don't know what you're doing. It is, representation of a part of you when it's your unique perspective. Self-expression is like concerning because it's like we might be invalidated and like you have to just start small. You can, you don't have to go crazy doing TikToks or whatever, but just start to make the video, share it with some friends, whatever. You definitely have to get it into some other people's hands, right? Because start with creating and then sharing, right? And just take small steps and like you said, get the reps and it will get better over time, but it never gets better if it never gets started.
Yeah. And I won't go into, I was just thinking, like, what are some dirt world ways that we could tell people to do stuff? You know, like just go volunteer out in the world and start doing stuff that is interesting to you, or
Absolutely.
grab your guitar and go play on the corner of a busy street. Like that.
Yep.
That'd get her going. Or just pick up the guitar, just have it in front of you, or just whatever. So anyway, I feel like I'm starting to ramble now. So like, why don't we start wrapping it up here a little bit? And before we go, tell everybody more about you and what they can do to
Yep.
find out more.
As I said, I'm Mike. I'm the founder of Mindworks. You can find me at mymindworks.com, but that's WORX. So MINDWRX.com. And like I said, my whole business is helping people overcome this resistance, overcome these fears, really start to understand what they're capable of and believe in themselves so that you can accomplish whatever you're dreaming of.
And you kind of know who I am if you're watching this on my channel, but I'm Corey. Just check out my blog, redefiningretirement.io. There's going to be a link in the description. And again, I've got all the resources from this episode and past episodes are going to be right below in the show notes. I'm going to have links to how you can work with Mike. And if you're interested in this stuff, and you should be if you're our age, just staying relevant, staying in the game, and building something that is going to be around for a while, make sure that you subscribe and even comment below and let us know what you're thinking. So that's all I have for you today. Yeah, I'll just stop it right there because I feel like I'm turning into a train wreck. So we'll just do that. But thanks again, everybody. Have a good rest of the day, and have a good one. I don't know.
Go create.